everyone. Welcome to the Test Associates podcast. This is the show where we cut through the noise and get to the heart of what's actually moving the needle in software testing today. I'm your host, and I sit down with leaders, thinkers who are shaping the future of quality. Today's guest is someone who does exactly that. Joining us today is Ansuman, who is one of UK's leading voices in modern quality engineering. With more than 16 years in testing and technology, he's built and transformed test practices across complex enterprise environments. He currently leads the test practice at Poundland and Dealz, and if you know anything about operating at that scale, you'll know just how much discipline and vision that actually takes. A passionate advocate for quality ownership, AI assisted testing, and engineering led delivery, Ansuman regularly speaks at industry conferences about the future of testing and quality leadership. And he's also a speaker at the National Software Testing Conference this year, which is going to be quite exciting. It's going to be next month on the 14th and 15th of July. So we're quite excited about that. And without any further delay, welcome to the podcast, Ansuman.
Thank you. Thank you, Vaishnavi. And really thank you for the generous introduction. And thanks for having me. So it's great to be here. I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time. And I can't wait for next month, July, to be in London and in person to talk about that. So,
All right, it's going to be,
thanks for the
I think,
opportunity.
sorry?
No, saying thanks for the opportunity.
No worries. I mean, it's always great to talk to leaders such as yourself who've got so much knowledge to share with so much experience. And I'm quite excited for your talk as well, and it's shaping up to be really good. Very excited about the conference next month. But yeah, you said you're from Birmingham. You're currently based in Birmingham, right?
Yes, yeah.
What's the weather like in Birmingham right now? Is it
I
still
think
like,
it's opening up. Obviously, last few days have been raining and a bit damp as usual in UK
yeah.
weather. It's actually opening up now,
Yeah.
and it's looking good, quite good, and hopefully it stays like that for throughout the summer. Doesn't get
Yeah,
too hot, obviously,
I know,
sometimes.
right? It's almost like we get 2 sunny days and then UK has to sort of get it out of its system and then has to cool down again with like a week-long rain. I'm
Absolutely.
based in Brighton, which is amazing. When the sun is out, I can be near the beach. But the other days when it's like all rainy, I always feel like I'm gonna get used to UK's weather, but it never happens.
It never happens. Just when you start to think that you're getting used to it, either something gets too hot or it starts raining again. So
Yeah.
it always keeps you on your toes. Yeah, you never get used to it.
I know, right? But anyway, Ansaman, thank you so much for taking the time and being on the podcast today. My first question to you is, why are so many test practices struggling to keep pace with modern software delivery?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge really is that software delivery has evolved in the last few years, especially in the last decade, but the test practices haven't really evolved that much. So if you really look at the today's world, where most of the organizations, they embrace agile, DevOps, cloud platform, complex systems integration and all that. And with all that, the delivery has changed. If we look a decade ago, the delivery was largely, if I remember 10 years back, it was largely a quarterly delivery. Every quarter you think of delivery kind of a thing. So, but now we are talking about the CI/CD pipeline, the Azure, the DevOps world, and all that, where the delivery is continuous, right? I mean, it's weekly, sometimes daily. It's pretty much negative. And mainly from the world where I'm coming from the retail world, we all know how demanding it can be with all the peak seasons and all that. So with that kind of fast moving delivery, testing hasn't quite evolved. Testing is still kind of treated as a phase. If you really look underneath, then it looks like it's a phase kind of thing. Testing as but that's something obviously kind of that needs to change. So the challenge isn't really that the testers are not really doing the good job. sorry, testers aren't not doing good job. I think is that the model and the framework is not supporting that kind of a delivery model. So and with the current world, testers are always asking, being asked to deliver faster,
Mm-hmm.
test the complex systems, and the problem isn't really about the software delivery. Isn't that the software delivery has changed? Is the problem that the many test practices didn't really keeping pace with the testing practices, not keeping really pace with the delivery. That is what is where the most of the organizations actually struggle.
Right. And in your opinion, what does future ready actually mean in the context of testing in that case?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one, and that's my topic basically, is the main topic. So people often assume when it's a future ready, the first thing that I've asked people, they immediately think that latest tools, having a latest tools, or like a more advanced automation, right?
Yeah.
Kind of thing, future ready. But that isn't really the case. I mean, that I don't really think that is the definition of a future ready. For me, future ready means having a test practice which can continuously adapt as the technology and the expectation and the delivery model evolve over time. So having that practice which can actually evolve. Um, if you really think about like very high level, like four attributes or characteristics of a future ready test practice, what it means is first is quality is owned by the organization as a whole. Yeah, quality is not really that something delegated to the test team that you look after the quality. It's not really that. Quality is owned by the organization right from the leadership team all the way developer, tester, and is shared within the team. So that's where the quality is. So that's one of the main kind of a pillar or one of the main characteristics. The second one is when we are taking a decisions are always being taken on the business risk
Mm.
and the customer impact rather than the testing activities. For example, like we have done 80% of testing. Yes,
Mhm.
that is done. No, what that 80% actually means. What they mean for the customer impact. The business risk. So that's also one of the thing. And the other thing is, which I think is it's quite important, which most of the time being overlooked, is the learning and capability development. It's about people. Like, that's always built into the model. So we always, the people are heart of it, right? We'll probably come to the AI element of it, I'm sure, like the thing. But I
Mhm.
think the learning and development is always part of that operating model. What you're trying to build, the people are on the focus on the core of it. And last but not least, every test practice we use some technology or the other, and technology should be there to kind of enable that enable the capability rather than to replace the actual human, the element of it. So I think these are the four kind of a thing. If we, that's more mainly characteristics basically of a future ready test practice. It's not about the tool, it's about the people, the process, and the governance around it.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of people, when they think about future ready, the first thing they think about is, okay, how to get AI ready.
Yeah,
That's probably the
absolutely.
first thing that they think about. And obviously that it's something that you just can't ignore these days, isn't it? Like, we've spent time like fighting against it, and it's just not possible to ignore it. We have to like take that into consideration 100%. And in your opinion, like, and this is the question that I have to ask everybody, all of my interviewees, how should the role of testing evolve as AI becomes more prevalent?
I mean, you just mentioned that you can't escape from that. I don't really think we should. I mean, AI is just like, 50 years back, 40 years back, even before my age. I mean, a computer wasn't a thing. When computer was there, like, we don't need to escape the computer, right? And the same thing. So we don't really need to escape the AI. I mean, that is just, it's a great enabler. So we
Yeah.
just need to ride the wave rather than, trying to oppose and, kind of trying to get around it. So, I mean, if you really look at the world of testing, I think AI is already changing the testing. If it hasn't completely, it's still kind of changing testing. But I think the biggest impact is not really, not the tools that we use. It is the human side of it. That is where we just need to focus on. So just trying to look at what AI is capable of and what AI is not really smart about. End of the day, it's still artificial intelligence. So
Mm.
I think historically, 5 years back, before the world of AI, testers use a lot of time generally as part of the testing job. They're using a lot of time, creating artifacts, right? Writing test cases, generating test data, maintaining the documentations,
Yeah.
and doing some executive and repetitive work. They're executing those repetitive works.
Mhm.
If you really look at it, AI can do all of that today, which is really good. That's something not to worry about. AI can all that, but what
Make
AI
you more
cannot,
productive.
yeah, just to make, it's more enabler. It just gives you more ammunition to do these things, quickly, and effectively.
Yeah.
However, having said that, what AI doesn't really, not quite effective yet, is to understand the context, right? And the organizational priorities, the customer trust, and if you talk about the business risk. So those are the stuff that AI is still not, will probably, when you're talking now, it is not really, AI is that, useful there. So I think that is where the human potential or the human kind of thing, remain essential. Like, that's what we need. So we are really moving from a world where testers are primarily executors to the ones where they are actually increasingly become like an advisor or decision makers, right?
Mhm.
So the future, just going back to your question then, so the future role of testing is less about checking the software whether it works or not. It's more about helping the organization understand the risk. Yeah. And then that's obviously, that's a really different conversation altogether. It requires a stronger business awareness, stronger communication, influence skill, for a tester, to be able to work more collaboratively, not only with the developer, also with the business. So they are kind of bridging, basically. They act as a bridge between the business and the delivery. So and that is where the human aspect of it comes.
Mhm.
That's how the role I see evolve in the next few years in the age of AI.
Right. And what skills do you think would actually help testers be more more successful in their role?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, I mean, technical skills will always matter, right? I mean, we live in a, kind of, this is still technology kind of a job. We work in the technology, so that will always be there. But I
Mhm.
think the human skills will probably matter the most in the next 5 years. Probably the first is critical thinking,
Yeah.
ability to identify, kind of risk, where the risk is, and what that, the what exactly an outcome actually means, rather than just a green pass or a red fail, what it actually translate to in terms of business risk, and to be able to ask those questions, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes, thinking and asking those questions, sometimes if you just ask the question, that opens up a lot of stuff, right? Sometimes, there are different people, and we are still working in the world of hybrid or remote kind of setup, where there's a lot of assumptions, right? If you're smart enough to ask the question, just ask the question, that opens up a lot of conversation, and kind of, generally takes us to a, kind of a better solution, rather than keeping it late. So one is critical thinking. The other thing is system thinking. When I say systems thinking, what I basically means is, within the last few years, with the cloud, with the AI, and with the complex systems, the platforms are highly interconnected than ever before, right? So I think, the thing is understanding how the change ripple across, one change ripple across many systems and components. That is one of the skills that the testers are the best place to kind of, leverage that skill, because they have the full kind of a 360-degree view of, how the systems operate, rather than, when you talk about developer, they may be doing a, isolated kind of change. When you talk about tester, they have that. So that is another skill. I would say that the third is the business understanding. I've touched on that. So, the best testers that I have worked with, in my career, they just don't understand the requirement. It's very easy to say, you understand the requirement and you test it, but you need to understand the actual customers, the operations, and the commercial outcomes. What that actually, the things that you're doing, that actually means.
Yeah.
And I would probably say the other one is the influence. Just to touch on my earlier point, when I say quality is just shared responsibility. 10 years back, quality is just testing, right? Quality assurance or testing was another thing. It was just testing job. Now it's a shared responsibility across the team. So I would say one of the skill that the tester should have, or a successful tester should have, is that ability to influence people, right? It's very easy to for me to go and influence my team that they report to me, but it's kind of a different conversation or kind of a different skill it takes to go and influence the developer or influence the development team, the leadership team, the customers, why quality matters,
Yeah.
right? So that influence skill is quite important. And obviously, the last thing to say, I mean, we are living in the age of AI, and that's not going to go away. So we just need to be AI, I would say AI awareness, just using, I'm carefully choosing the word. I'm not saying AI fluency or AI expert. We don't really need to be an AI expert, just that awareness, because going forward, when you do it, so we will start interacting with more AI powered tools, test tools. So we just need to learn how effectively collaborate with those tools. Just to extract more out of it, really. Just seeing is as a kind of a catalyst to give you better outcome rather than trying to fight. So I think these are the skills that generally would kind of skill that would help a tester in the next 5 years down the line.
I think you've summed it up so well, right from like the technical skills to how we should like be aware of AI. You don't need to be an expert. Again, you've also mentioned about the soft skills as well. I think you've summed it up so well, Ansuman. Thank you for that brilliant answer. I want to try and take the next question more from like a bird's eye view. You've mentioned how testers want to be more like should be more commercially aware as well, along with their technical skills. From an organizational perspective, could you tell me what separates companies that would succeed in test transformation as opposed to those that wouldn't, or maybe would
Yeah,
struggle?
yeah, that's really very good question. I mean, obviously, looking at from a moving focus from a individual to an organization. From my experience, successful organizations always start with a purpose, right? What they're trying to do. But if you look at the same time, the struggling organizations who actually struggle with the test practice, they often start with the tools, right? That's always the kind of flashy in front of eyes, right? And there's a new tool, there's a new framework, there's AI coming in. So the successful organization always start with the purpose. They'll probably ask you, if I was successful organizations, they generally ask the question, why are we changing, right? If something is changing, why do we need to change? And whatever we are going to do, what the business problem is going to solve, right? And then the most important thing is how will we know that we have succeeded? That's one of the key things. Like, when do you know to stop and kind of retrospect or reflect back, right? Those are the things that the organizations, the successful organizations actually think, before they start anything, right? What are we doing? What is it going to solve? And how we are going to measure what we're doing, when and how, to see whether it's going in the right direction or what we need to review. But if you flip the coin, then the struggling organizations, they often start straight into automation, right? Oh, manual testing guys are sitting there for, all day doing 5 test cases. Automation means, you click a button, then it will just do the thing with magic, right? So jump to automation. AI initiatives these days, everywhere flashing in front of eyes. AI is, there's a magic bullet, it's going to solve everything. And they think about the framework design. But those are the things if you immediately jump into that, and that is where the problem is. But when I say all that, I don't really want to give away that impression that no, I'm against technology, right? I mean, technology becomes, technology should really be the transformation strategy. It should not be the strategy, right? It should be kind of, technology should support the change, but it should not create the change, right? You need the change. You need to, the vision why you need a change, and you need an actual requirement. Technology always it acts as a best plugin. You can plug in just to enhance your stuff. And that is where I think the organization who try to do all this fancy stuff rather than starting from kind of a vision, not a scratch, that is where the success and the failure lies. And I think the other thing is probably one of the key thing, even if you decide what to do, going back like why you're doing and all the answer all the questions, I think the key thing is not to do everything in once. I've seen a couple of instances where, from my experience and from other organization, talking to the test leaders in the industry, even if you identify all the right thing to do, I think people generally jump to everything, right? And just do five things together just to speed up. That doesn't really work. You just have to take, kind of a stepping approach, do the first thing, then, do kind of a thing. So yeah, in a very high, high level nutshell, that's kind of, I think that's where, that kind of differentiate between a successful and a failure
Yeah.
in terms of best practice.
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer. You've also mentioned something like obviously there's something called as the shiny object syndrome, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
obviously AI is part of it with so many things going on. You don't really know which one to prioritize or which one or which tool to use
yeah,
for what skill. I think my next question is more from the perspective that let's say somebody's listening to this podcast and they know that their testing practice needs to evolve, right?
yeah,
But because of so many options out there, and they're feeling like quite overwhelmed by it all. So,
yeah.
what would you think is the best way to go about it?
Yeah, I think this is where many probably test leaders and many again kind of they're stuck, right? Sometimes you need to change something. Then you sit down with a blank, kind of sketch. What you need to, oh my God, there's so many things. Yeah. Either you do something wrong, wrong in the sense either you jump the gun and kind of try to do five or six things, or you just don't know what to do. You just leave it for another day, right?
Yeah.
You go for a coffee and then leave it for another day. It never really kicks off. So
Yeah.
I think this is one of the key kind of a thing. So I would say, I mean, my advice would be don't start with a solution, like, what you're trying to do. Like, sorry, don't start a when I say don't start a solution, don't try to see what you're trying to achieve. Start with the problem and the understanding of the problem, right?
Mhm.
Start with what the problem is, because when you start with the solution, this is what I need, then you kind of made up your mind that, this is what is going to be. Subconsciously, you're kind of saying, this is how I'm going to do. However, if you start with a kind of a understanding of what the current landscape is and what the problem is,
Mhm.
then I think that's probably a better kind of a beginning to start. And then you take a step back and ask some of the questions. You just sit down and and this is from my experience really, just just ask yourself the question: what are the biggest quality risks our organization facing today? Right? These are the question. And then what causes the most friction in a delivery? You look at your past few delivery, project delivery, and just ask the question: what was the biggest friction that caused? Was it the person? Was it the people who were like not skilled enough? Was it the requirement that wasn't clear enough? Was it the collaboration that was never there to start with? And was it the lack of understanding, kind of thing? So look at the friction points. And the other one I would probably say, kind of then you see that how success looks like 12 months from now, right? Whatever you're going to do, how success looks like in 12 months from now. Not exactly solution, this is what I need. If you answer these three, kind of, if you get the answer to these three, then automatically the solution will follow after that. And then I would probably say that you then clarify the ownership, right? Quality ownership. Who should own the quality? Like, it's everyone basically, as I said, not just the test team. Everyone on the quality. And then the other thing I would probably say, the improve the visibility of risk. When there is a risk, just try to make sure that the risk get everyone's visibility, not just contained within the team, so that people are more informed and then they can take a better decisions.
Yeah.
Um, and that. So, and the other thing is, try always not to scale too fast, right? Just build the foundation, then build slowly on top of that. Take one or two projects, in the upcoming kind of a quarter as a sandbox experiment, see how it goes, and you again go back to the drawing board, try whether that works, and kind of this scale, I mean, build the foundation, then scale after that. That's probably the way I would say to advise anyone looking to transform their test practice.
Lovely. I think let's make that a little more actionable now. If a test leader had, let's say, in the next 12 months, what is the one thing you'd ask them to do?
Um, I mean, it's very difficult to say probably one thing. I mean, but yeah, I would probably say purely from a world of testing, if you're looking like wearing a testing hat, I would probably say if you really like one thing when I say within the code, like one of the things look at, don't look at the test matrices. Like when you don't think that at the end of this project I'll have a 90% pass rate. I'll have five small defect, minor defects open, right? Ask the question is at the end of this kind of a phase or 6 months or 3 months, whatever your review period, how the customer would feel, right? How this, I mean, I'm talking from Poundland perspective, how a store colleague would feel, if you give them an iteration of a new one, how they would feel. What would be the business impact of that? What the current business risk is? That is always a business impact, right?
Yeah.
It's there is always risk and an impact there. So if the risk is currently at whatever level, how is going to be after 3 months or 6 months, right?
Yeah.
So, and then what about the commercial outcome of that? Are
Mhm.
we going to save money? Are we going to, reduce some of the inefficiencies? Are we going to make the process more streamlined? So think from those kind of perspective rather than thinking of just, purely what's my automation coverage is, what my test rate, pass rate. Because the thing is, the leadership team, when I say leadership, not the test leadership, like the directors, the IT leadership team, they don't really invest in testing. That's the fact, and this shouldn't be. That's the test leader, job. They invest in the quality. Quality is everyone's. Like, and when something go wrong, the leadership team also, they are worried. So I think we need to change that discussions from testing pass rate
Mhm.
to customer satisfaction, to reduce risk, greater confidence, across the thing, and then commercial outcome kind of a thing. So I would say, like, go from metric to outcome, kind of focused.
Mhm.
That would be the first thing, probably, if you really have to sum up
Yeah.
my kind of, the last 10 minutes. So just to answer your question in one, that's really the one thing I would probably say.
Lovely. That's amazing, Ansuman. Thank you so much for that answer. I think I've enjoyed having this conversation with you. I think you've summed up a lot of different areas really well. And I'm so excited for our attendees to even hear your talk at the conference this year. But are there any other thoughts you'd want to leave our audience with before your talk next month?
Um, I mean, there's obviously talk. I didn't want to just give away everything
Of
that I'm going
course.
to talk. I mean,
It's
it's
a
obviously
teaser.
it's kind of just about it, just to
Yeah.
keep you interested. So, I mean, I would probably say a future ready test practice. It's not about, it's not something about which predicts the future, right? It is something that's just designed to kind of adapt with the change in the delivery landscape that we have. So yeah, I mean, that's probably, there's other stuff. I'll probably go into more detail, like, and when I'm in person at the conference. So yeah, looking forward to that really, and it's a real pleasure speaking with you today, and
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm hosting such a great conversation. Thanks, Vaishnavi.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it just feels easier when I'm talking to somebody who is also having a conversation. Because yeah, that's the point of this whole podcast. Yeah, we try our best to like just provide as much knowledge to people whilst keeping it like
Yeah,
very calm and conversational.
yeah.
But you've been amazing, Ansuman. Thank you. And yeah, really excited to see you as well next month. But yeah, thank you again for your time today.
Thank you, and see you next month. Bye.
Yeah.